And good afternoon again, everybody. This is Tom from Roadrunner Garage one more time. Going through the last of the three catalogs I bought yesterday. This is the 1973 Matchbox version. Looking at this catalog, there was quite a few firsts in 1973, as you will see. Kind of a cool thing they did in 1972. They had a Formula 2 team that actually won the Formula 2 championship. It was sponsored by Matchbox, which was really cool. They won the championship in 72. Again, more changes in the catalog. More changes in the catalog. Some new models, such as the classics like the AMC Javelin. You'll notice the Boss Mustang later on in this catalog that came out. You're getting one of the muscle cars of that era. There were quite a few changes in 73, I've noticed. And also, that's the debut of the Roll-O-Matics, where they have a moving part on the car. I think they had two in 1973, and they continued expanding the Roll-O-Matics line within the 1 to 75. There's the Stretch-A-Fetcha. There's the Boss Mustang. Like I say, they were starting to get more of the muscle cars. Eventually, they'd come out with the Challenger and the Firebird later on in the decade. A lot of classics here. They were getting more modern. There were more modern. It appears like there was more modern styling in the 73 vehicles in 73. Really going through a trend. It's kind of neat to see the transition. There's the Roll-O-Matics, their debut year. The first one was the Piston Popper and the Clipper, where the two had a moving part on each car, which was kind of cool. The Cascade. It's another set they had. That was the debut of the 1973 was the debut of the Skybusters planes. They made them for several years, and then they really did a lot of experimenting in 73 product-wise, it looks like. Screaming Demons motorcycles. Of course, the traditional Super Kings, they were going more with the super fast type wheels on a lot of them. The Muir Hill Tracker was a new vehicle that year. They're expanding the lineup. And still had some of the traditionals, like the Massey Ferguson tractor was still around. Cranes. The more modern, a lot of them had a more modern look in 73. They were kind of modernizing the line in 73, it appears. I kind of like to one day get the 1972 catalog just to see what the differences are. Here's the Speed Kings. They had a more expanded lineup from what we saw in the 1971 catalog. So the Speed Kings line was definitely growing as well. Again, as they say, there's nothing like a healthy competition to improve the breed, and I think that Matchbox and Hot Wheels were in pretty good war when it comes to die-cast cars in the 70s. They were always trying to top each other, it would appear. Interesting, though, that Hot Wheels never really made that I'm aware of, a larger scale like the Speed Kings or Super Kings that I'm aware of. But if somebody can correct me on that, maybe I'm wrong about that, I don't know. But I don't think Hot Wheels ever made a larger scale car, but I could be wrong about that. Aircraft kits, this is when Matchbox started to dabble into the model kits, and they kind of had some success with it, I think. They did some semis and some cars as well, but they started with the aircraft kits. There's the models of yesteryear. They're starting to get more newer cars, I think, in 1973, what appears they were getting into newer year vehicles, like from the early 30s. There's the chopper case set. And they had these what do they call these? Plug toys. It's kind of based on a vegetable. I tell you, they really had some wacky ideas in 1973. They had some real wacky ideas. Here's more tracks you could get. But I think they were really just trying to aim at all the fences to try to cover every base they could in the die-cast car world. I really think they were really, like I say, Matchbox and Hot Wheels had a pretty good war going on in the late 60s and early 70s. That's pretty obvious, up to the 1980s pretty much. Had a pretty good war between the two. Of course, you had smaller makes like Dinky and Corgi were still around, not as large, but they were, Corgi was in competition as well. So there were several different companies, but Matchbox and Hot Wheels are kind of the big two. There's another set there. These are your super sets. They were slowly, like I said, they were slowly changing the logos at the time. From the old style to the newer style was kind of a trend. Like I said, in the 1971 catalog, they were kind of going through a transition. They still had the steer and go set, had the parking garage. They had several different parking garages you could get throughout the years, as well as service stations, which was kind of cool. And they had the play sets similar to Hot Wheels. They were still competing with Hot Wheels at the time, obviously. And the pop-ups, which was kind of a cool thing. I had a later version of them in my childhood, like from the late 70s. It was a little different, but I did have one when I was a kid. Of course, unfortunately, it's long gone, but looks like they had remote control dozers and kind of cool vehicles you could have. It was just a cool time to be a kid. What can I say? What an era to be a kid in. All the stuff you could get. And that's it. Well, I hope you enjoyed this deep dive I did on these 3 Matchbox catalogs. This 1970, 71, and 73. Wishing everybody out there a happy Thanksgiving. So everyone have a happy and healthy Thanksgiving and more to come. So, but for now, happy Thanksgiving and meep, meep.